tall. I brought a stool this year because I'm almost not as tall as the podium. There is a bathroom without steps, the restroom over here on my right, and of course the boys and girls rooms that are here off the gymnasium. So that we're glad that you're here today. The museum is open upstairs, and it'll be open until 3, and if the picnic is later, you probably can still go there afterward. Margot Hansen, one of our very active members of our History Society, is over here in the corner taking your memberships for our Sterling Eureka Lake Town Historical Society. You can either renew or join today. And the Hansen family is also offering some syrup today to kind of sweeten the deal if you become a member today. If you're a lifetime member, you also can just go up and see Margot and you'll get some syrup too. So we welcome everyone to do that. And there's copies of the newsletter over there as well. So then, when we still have extra seating, if you want to move toward the front, we've got right up by the food. This podium that I am using today was dedicated in 2010, and it was made by Shirley Christensen's nephew, Todd Rollhauser, who we all knew. I and her husband and family used to come a lot. And the sound system has been shared by lots of different groups, and it was dedicated in 2004. So at this time, we are going to do the pledge to the flag, and longtime committee member of the picnic, and I think Shirley kind of carries the prize of coming to most of the picnics. She's only missed, I think, one in her whole history. So Shirley's going to talk a little bit about our flag, and then we're going to rise and do the pledge to the flag.
Did you talk about who dedicated the flag?
This flag was dedicated in 2011, and Pat and Jerry Willits were very instrumental in getting this nice flag here at the community center, and it's used for lots of events.
Thank you. Yes, they asked me, good morning, or no, it is good afternoon. They asked me to find some information about the flag before we give the pledge to the flag. And so I looked up in my World Encyclopedia. I didn't go to Google. I went to the book because I'm a librarian, so I keep those things in hand. Anyway, did you know Flag Day is celebrated on June 14 in memory of the day in 1777 when the Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes as the official flag of the United States. The flag of the United States was to have 13 stripes alternating red and white, and the Union to have 13 white stars in a blue field representing the new constellation. But this part I did not know before. By 1794, 2 new states had joined the Union. Congress decided to add 2 stars and 2 stripes to the flag. It ordered a 15-stripe flag used after May 1, 1795. Someone answered the phone. 5 more states had come into the Union by 1817. However, then, Congress did not want the flag to have 20 stars and 20 stripes. So, because it would be too cluttered. So they changed it to having 13 stripes and then 1 star for each of the states. And did you know that Wisconsin joined the Union in May 25, 1848? And Minnesota joined the Union May 11th in 1858. And Wisconsin is the 30th state of the Union. Minnesota is the 32nd. They're always behind us. I just had to say that. Alaska joined the Union in January 3 of 1959, being the 49th state. Wouldn't it be interesting if they had a state with the 49 stars on it? I don't know if they did or not. Hawaii joined the Union in August 21 of 1959, becoming the 50th state. And that's what we have at this time. So now if you would stand and we will pledge.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
On your program, we do have printed the worship table grace. Hi, this is a prayer that we have sung for many, many years here at Cushing. But first of all, I want to thank you for coming, and I do want to thank the Lord for giving us the opportunity to be together for this wonderful picnic. And we're grateful that we all can be together. It's a time that we can take today to visit and to bond as a group and as a family. We want to bless our appetites, both physically and spiritually, and we want the Lord to help us to guide our mealtime conversation, that it might steer our hearts to His purpose. And now please join with me in singing our table grace, and then the kitchen is ready, and then you can just get up, and if you do need assistance, maybe go first, and our meal is ready to enjoy. Be present at our table, Lord. Be here and everywhere adored. These mercies bless and grant that we may strengthen for thy service be. Amen. Okay, we're not going to dismiss in any order, but so please just form a line, and the kitchen is there to help you if you need, and you can also come around with some beverages if you have trouble carrying everything to your table.
Yeah.
As my grandmother would say, eat now. Before we leave today, we're going to be having ice cream and cake at the end, so it's worth sticking around and making sure you have a little bit more appetite. This afternoon, our program is going to be Pastor Mark Peacock from the Wolf Creek United Methodist Church. He's retired about 11 years ago from his official assignment creating and writing stories and combining them in some very interesting books. So he's been reading to groups of people and publishing his stories, and also on the radio, so you can listen to him there.
We'll see in a little while.
Pastor Peacock will also talk about his, when he moved from California to here, and so he's a settler also, and so he will talk a little bit about that, and then share with us today a story that he has written. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you my friend and the pastor of my church, Wolf Creek Methodist, Mark Peacock.
I don't think you're going to get a story there. You are looking at a recovering city slicker. City slicker, right? I grew up in Hollywood, California. Everybody's got to come from someplace, right? Well, that's where I came from. We were talking to people around here, and a lot of people didn't stray too far from here, but I did. It was an interesting place to grow up. We were in the Hollywood Hills. If you see the Hollywood letters, and you go a little to the left and up and over, you find Lake Hollywood. A little further was the small house that my parents bought, the smallest house in the neighborhood. And the whole valley, the San Fernando Valley, is spread out before you. And at night, it's like a collection of jewels lit up. It's really spectacular. Down at the bottom of the hill was Warner Brothers. Over on the left hill was Universal before they built Universal, their game park, whatever they got now. And then Disney was next to Warner Brothers. But it was an oasis in the city because back of us it was all undeveloped, and it still is. They managed to keep it that way. So my two younger brothers and I could go out with our dogs and our bows and arrows, fight pollywogs after it rained in the creeks. And all we had to worry about were rattlesnakes, poison oak, and an occasional skunk, maybe. There were deer, there were coyotes, and the coyotes would come up to the edge of the yards. But it was an oasis in the middle of the city. It was like growing up in the country in many ways. And so I went to Hollywood High, and back in the days when you could work your way through college, I was able to work my way through college through performance, because I was serious about, I was going to do two things. I was going to change the world because I wasn't going to be official as a government employee, an ambassador or anything, but as a well-known entertainer, I could bring people together in a way nobody else could. You know? When you're 19, that's a great idea, right? So, but I had the privilege of having to work my way through school. And because of that, I had some jobs that put me in circles where my parents had divorced. And so occasionally there were times when things were very thin. Mom didn't have a lot of money for us. And so I was able to, because of the work that I had to do to get my way through school, I was able to move in circles that we never could have afforded otherwise. And particularly graduate school, I was with people that were making the headlines of the day. And I got to spend an hour alone with each of the important people that came through that week and ask the questions that you can only ask when you're 22. You know? So I found a couple of things. One is that it doesn't matter who you are. If you got feet, they put on their socks the same way you and I do. And they respond to the same impulses that you and I do. It's one of the things I love about Scripture is that human nature hasn't changed. The things that drive people are the same as they used to be. Greed, money, power. People laugh and cry over the same impulses that you and I do. And it doesn't matter what the culture is. I was very involved with the international community in Los Angeles. As a single person at the time, it was very good for me. And this was before the smog really took over and caused a lot of problems. One of the things they would do at Valley View Elementary School was the Sears Foundation would bring in a semi, and they put the signs down on each side, and they would say to us city kids, "This is a cow. That's where your milk comes from. And that's a chicken. That's where eggs come from. Feel the lamb's wool. Smell the..." And so it was something that city kids really typically were not used to. There was another thing that happened. When I was small, there was on Quinton Boulevard, there were car lots and the kiddie land. And then, what I'm trying to say is I saw the San Fernando Valley go quickly. Money and greed swallowed things up very quickly. After a while, it didn't take long because of taxes. The car lots had to move out further because it cost too much to be there. And then you had 1- and 2-story buildings. And now you've got concrete canyons. And if you see what happens to the north end of Stillwater, you'll understand what I'm talking about. When I left, in my mid-20s, they were buying up lots in the San Fernando Valley, empty vacant lots, to create pocket city parks, because it had happened so quickly, they hadn't had time to plan for any of that. We have time to plan how we want this place to be. It's another thing I learned. I interviewed for the Pioneer Press a fellow by the name of John Borchert. He was a University of Minnesota professor in urban geography. He'd spent his career studying the Twin Cities. And I got onto him when he was called into Osceola. And before the gas station was put in, there were some objections. And he found himself saying, look, this is a state highway. It looks like a residential street. But it's a state highway, and things are going to change. And I remember he said to me, and for the article I did for the Pioneer Press, he said, you know, you have to plan if you want to try to keep your downtowns and your rural areas, because we're getting to the car, and you're going to have strip malls, because that's the way automobile transportation operates. So I learned you need to think about the future. One of the other things I saw was that there was nothing like this in Los Angeles. The old timers after World War II, all people were coming out because of the war. And the old timers were just kind of lost. And then they died off. And so there was no history. We had a wonderful fraternity house in 1885 in California with oak paneling, and it was just a wonderful old house. After I graduated, it was torn down, made into a parking lot. You know, so, and I was telling CNN in May here that a few years ago we tried to find the houses that my wife had lived in Southern California. All gone. High-rise buildings, strip malls, parking lots, all gone. Planning is the key. One of the other things they did for us in elementary school was that they taught us about contour plowing, city kids, contour plowing and windbreaks. And so after I was appointed to Birchwood and Excellent here, I spent 9 years driving Highway 48 and out by McKinley. Here I see a guy plowing straight up and down the hill, and I thought, well, it's going to erode. And about year 5 out of my 9 years was a big gully there. What did I learn? We don't seem to learn much about it by history. We seem to repeat the same kind of mistakes. And the windbreaks are disappearing. Either the trees have died because of their age, or they've been cut down and not replaced because of the say you've got to go end to end with the big machinery. We don't seem to learn, and maybe it's the same reason that every generation seems to have its own war. I don't know. So, I find myself, and I'm appointed to Birchwood and Excellent. I'm there for 9 years. Nobody's been there that long before, and I had a wonderful time. I remember being in a barn one night, and they're milking. And they had the kids in the barn with them in case there was a fire in the house. You know, it was wood stove. And so I asked, you know, what's with this zigzagging all over the place? Why don't you just go down one side and up the other? Well, they knew their animals. And they knew the rate each animal milked, and it was different. I've also been at the kitchen table when the milk check was too small and not what was needed or expected. Who doesn't get paid? Who doesn't get paid? Maybe it's the vet this time. So, I think that maybe the best way to say, I've learned a great deal about human nature. I've learned to appreciate the realness of people like you. I've learned a long time ago that everybody needs to be treated and deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. And everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. I did more than 40 years of article writing. I was never called as a full-time pastor. I was half-time up at Birchwood and Excellent, and the other half I was community education director for the Unity School District. Two supposedly half-time positions. And then I was appointed to St. Croix Falls and Wolf Creek. That was a 3/4 time. At least that's what I was paid for. But the money, we had a bunch of kids, and the money had to come from somewhere, and it came from writing. I didn't do fiction then because we had to eat. And in those days, when magazines did print fiction, you'd send something out, and 6 months later, you might get a check, or more likely a rejection slip. We had to eat, so I knew if I had a contributing editorship or a monthly column and a couple of magazines, we would eat, we'd get paid, I'd get paid. So I think some of you know I was the last Wisconsin freelancer that the Pioneer Press was publishing. Then I retired, and there were stories kind of growing around, and so I decided to put those down. And so as Marcy said, yes, I'm on the radio. They give me the privilege of the first Tuesday night of every month until I run out of stories. Most authors never get that privilege. Up here you would catch it online, wpcaradio.org, and you can pick it up because it streams all over the world online. I've had responses from Malaysia and Austria. I've got a son who lives in Portugal. He says, Dad, I'm not getting up that early even for you. But every fourth story is what I call a mangled fairy tale. And so that's where you take a fairy tale and just put it on its side. A week ago, I was reading as a fundraiser for Festival Theater, and the story that I read was Snow Job and the Four Dwarfs. So, when I was a chaplain, after I retired, they gave me about 7 months to recuperate, and then asked if I would take on the chaplaincy. I wanted to be one of the chaplains of Good Samaritan. And so I would have a chat group on Monday afternoons. And I asked him one day, I said, what was your favorite fairy tale when you were growing up? I took a vote, and it's Jack and the Beanstalk, which is a mangled fairy tale. It has to be Jack and the Bean Sprouts. Mama's got a vegan, the cow has to go, right? And so, anyway. I think the so whats are, I've mentioned several, and there's a certain, we decided to stay in the Midwest. We were 18 years in White Bear Lake and then 32 years up here. And we decided because there's kind of a humility about it that I think the human spirit needs. In Southern California, there's a feeling underneath everything that if you only engineer things right and spend enough money, you can solve all your problems in life. It's not true. It's not true. Here, doesn't matter who you are, how much money you got, how powerful you are, how famous you are, whatever's coming, it's bigger than you, and so you better adapt. I think that's important for the human spirit. And to acknowledge, as you do here, ancestry and sense of place, the importance of family and connections. I'm glad they allowed enough time for people to talk. This, I think, is my third one of these. I think I was here for the first that we had in this building. But these are important things for human beings. And I really appreciate it and encourage it. And Marcy, I'm going to end there. Okay? I didn't bring a, well, I have stories. I've got some books in the car, which if you wanted, you can get the stories on Amazon.com, or if you ambush me, I usually carry 1 or 2 with me. But there are 2 paperbacks out, and there are 5 on Kindle. And I saw, the reason I went to Kindle is I saw my colleagues at the nursing home taking their breaks, reading stories. And here you can read a complete story and get back to work on time. So, a little different than on the farm, but in the nursing home it worked. Ma'am? Thank you.
Any questions for Pastor Peacock about settling here, or any books that he writes or anything? I'll have him bring in some of his books, because you might want to look through them as you're visiting at the end of the afternoon. Thank you.
You're old enough to call me Mark, something.
Oh, hang on. I had my high school reunion recently. He said I know him well enough I can call him Mark, but I went to my high school reunion and I just couldn't call Mr. Hammer Roger. My English teacher. We're going to have a song now by Kristen Hansen. We're going to have her do a selection, and it's going to lead into Russ Hansen talking about picnic members that are no longer with us anymore. I'm just going to do one verse of Amazing Grace, and if you want to sing along, go ahead. I'd love it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you very much, Kristen. Still has that beautiful voice, and she's been singing here for many years. It's wonderful. Russ Hansen.
It's nice to see all of you here, the people that showed up. There's always a few people that don't make it back because they passed away during the year. This time, the people that I know who are gone, Orville Brenquist and Ray Lundquist. I'm going to talk a little bit about those. I also look around to see who I know is still around but not here. Like I usually expect to see Lauren Nelson, our former postmaster, and his wife. I don't see them here, but they're still okay as far as I know. He just has a lot of trouble with his health. This segment of the program is brought to you by the Wolf Creek Cemetery, which is going to open up a new western addition later this summer when the surveyor comes in and surveys the lots. The lots are going to be for sale, and if you come early, this center section is on a knoll, and you can look down on the rest of your the folks in the cemetery if you choose. If you just pick the ones as we sell them out, we'll probably give them to you for one price, but if you pick the top of the hill, you might end up paying a little extra. But it's worth it, probably. The reason I said that is I went to the annual meeting of the cemetery down there, and you probably all remember Ralph Doolittle came here forever as a picnic member, and then Dwayne, his son. Well, for like 70 years or so, they were the people who took care of the Wolf Creek Cemetery with a board and figured out where our neighbors and everyone was buried. Well, they both are gone. Dwayne 2 years ago and Ralph in '91. And so other volunteers came up and take over. So Rick Davidson over here stepped in really abruptly when Dwayne died and took the thing over, and then they convinced me now to volunteer to help. And so my first help is if you have family buried in Wolf Creek Cemetery and you're wondering if there are still empty graves there, we have some records on that, and so we can tell you if there are still places in your family plot that are available, and you can talk to us about that. We're hoping to have that figured out easily. Okay, so now that advertising, I only have one more advertisement, but I'll wait till after I go through okay, the two obituaries. I first asked, besides Orville and Ray Lundquist, who else did I forget that may have passed away from our local folks here that come? Can you think of someone else? Anyone? Well, if you think of it, let me know. But I did remember Orville, and his brother is here, and his sister is here, right? Are you the two left of that family? Beverly and Orrin, yeah, because Ray, okay. And I got his obituary, which I set back there, and I'm just going to tell you just a little bit. He was born September 21st, 1944, exactly the same day as my brother Marvin. They were twins almost. He went to the Trade River and Branstead schools, worked at Dalton Gear, was in the Army, then in the roofing business, and was married and lived in rural Grantsburg, worked at different jobs, liked outdoor sports. His parents, Oscar Grenquist, lived right up on River Road up by Trade River, so that was the Grenquist area for all my life that I can remember. I knew him because he went to Trade River Church when we were kids, and we were in Bible school and things too. The other person who passed away, you may not know, his name is Ray Lundquist. Those of us who've been going to the picnic for a long time remember that out on the barrens, when we had the picnic out where Trade River crosses Evergreen, we always had ice cream like we are today, and we always had strawberries because a guy named Aaron Lundquist, who came with strawberries, he had the first fresh strawberries in the area. His family homesteaded out on the St. Croix in western Sterling in the 1860s. By the way, the Granquist family are also Swedes that came over and homesteaded this area. We have two of the Swedish families here that are missing in person. But Ray was born in 27, started out Aaron had moved from the east side, the Sterling side, over across the river to the Minnesota side and had a garden there and everything. He always came, and for us kids that went out, he was the guy who made the coffee on the rocks in this big old copper boiler. We got to help. We were really good, got to light the match maybe. And Ray was his son. He was born in 27, grew up over on the Minnesota side, was in the World War II, went off. After he got back under the GI Bill, went to the college and got a job. He went in newspaper writing, it's like you're talking about. And for a while, he worked up at Grantsburg at the newspaper office, and then eventually ended up down in Rochester. For many years, he was the Post Bulletin, with the Post Bulletin. He died at 91 last year after an operation that was all of a sudden. We had a picture of him too, but he, in later years, started coming to the picnic here and generally brought strawberries too, because I told him, well, his father we'd always depended on his father to make strawberries, and so that he felt he should be obligated to do that too. And so a couple of years when he couldn't make it, he sent some money for us to buy some. This year, I was going to bring strawberries, but my berries weren't ripe. So I had a guy in California, probably near Hollywood, by the name of Juan pick strawberries for me and sent them up to Walmart, so we had some strawberries here. Yeah. Now, the second advertisement. We're talking about two Swedish families that lost a member here that were probably fourth generation, maybe, Americans. We have a book from the History Society that we got out last year, and it's Eric England wrote this in 1920, remembering his Swedish ancestors who came to Sterling, homesteaded where Trade River goes into the St. Croix River. The local folks call it England Bay, or some of them Anglin Bay, but England was the guy that homesteaded there. The boy was 14 when he came. In 1920, when he was an older fellow, as old as I am, he wrote a remembrance of his days living on barrens, and then what he did afterwards. He did quite well. He went on, he got to be a school teacher. He said, although he didn't know English very well, he still got school. And anyway, so this book is for sale for $10 from the History Society, and it has a lot of pictures, and It's probably typical of a Swedish family who moved here in Sterling, especially out on the Barrens, tried it for a while and realized it wasn't very much future in it, and then moved on. But he talks about living out on the Barrens in the 1860s, so I think it's a good book. And that's sponsored by the Sterling Eureka Lake Town Historical Society, which you can become a member if you'd like to. We have a museum upstairs with a couple rooms, and we're quite active, and we're really enjoying having, we have about 35 members, of which most of you sign up at this picnic. So and we'd like to have you sign up again and be members, because that 35 members means that we look like we're really ambitious group. Okay, thank you.
This is great. We get lots of programs. We now are going to say thank you and recognize many of the people that are here today. First of all, I would like to thank, well, I guess we can say thank you for the ice cream, even though we haven't had it yet, but the U.S. Bank in Cushing for many years has been donating ice cream. And of course, this wonderful community center, which we have the opportunity to be here today, and I know that many of you come here for other events as well, so we're really fortunate to have this in our community. I'd like to recognize also the picnic committee. So you've seen many of us running around. I am on the committee, and if you want to maybe just stand or wave, Patsy, Mary Jo and George, Don Erickson, Russ Margot and Scott Hansen, Shirley Christensen, and Cheryl and Kristen Hussein. So, and we are always looking for members. Oh, and Carol Mitchell. So we're looking for members to join us. It's really fun, and we've already received today a couple suggestions to make the 82nd picnic even better than this one. So that's good. We appreciate your suggestions. We have 60 people here today, and maybe a few more have strangled in, but as Pastor Peacock mentioned, this is really a wonderful event, and many communities do not have this event to get together and visit, to honor our ancestry, the reasons for settling here, and staying connected. I think that's really important. We have, and then Shirley Christensen is going to help me with this next part. We're going to honor the men and women in our attendance today that are over 80 years of age, and couples who have been married for more than 40 years. We think this is really a special award that we do. I do have names. Okay.
These are different awards than from what we've had before. And that's because one is to get the gifts that you have back there with Chris. And the second one was to report about the flag. And hence I thought my job is all done. Well, Thursday I realized that I hadn't ordered the ribbons for the oldest man, oldest woman, and the longest married couple. So I hurriedly went to a friend and asked him if he knew of someone who would be able to do this in a quick hurry. And they made better ones than what I had thought we had done before. So with great pleasure, we're giving you a new award.
That's great. Sometimes spur of the moment stuff just really does work out for the best. There are 13 men in our attendance today that are over 80 years old, and Orlo Whitby is the oldest gentleman here today, and he is 96. And as you are honored, we are going to be taking the picture in the back where the chairs are set up. So Orlo, you can receive your award and then go to the back. Do you want me to read all the names or just, okay.
Thank you.
And in our attendance today, there are 14 women that are over the 94.
Ha!
And I want to be just like her when I grow up.
Come on, Connie.
And here today we have 11 couples that have been married 40 years or more. I think that's just wonderful. And we have a tie, and I think we had this last year too. So we're going to have you guys share this award. We're each wear it for 6 months. So Myron and Merle Bergstrom have been married 71 years. And Amy and Jerry Swenson have been married 71 years. And I think a couple of years ago we interviewed Myron and asked him about the success of that. I think it's just wonderful.
What month?
Oh,
October?
And they're actually,
I think 71 years, no matter when it is, it's an honor. And we know they're good friends, so.
They were married after you.
Well, I think it's just great. And Lyle and Marlene Young are here today, and they are celebrating their 63rd anniversary today. And just reading through this list and looking at the names, I just really think, again, this is probably a picnic like none other. And I think some magazine or some story person should write about this picnic.
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary to you.
So now we have the opportunity, do you want to take a picture now?
Do it. Do it now.
We're going to sing and then let's sing and then we'll get up. Okay. All right, we'll sing. Okay. So last year I picked, we're going to do the picture after we sing. Last year I picked This Land Is Your Land, so this year I picked My Country 'Tis of Thee to sing, because I like all patriotic songs. America the Beautiful, and all of this. So My Country 'Tis of Thee was written by Reverend Samuel Francis Smith. I'm not sure exactly the year, but there are 4 verses, and I remember growing up, we sang this every day in school along with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we're going to sing one verse of My Country 'Tis of Thee, and I hope that I know you all can remember the words. So we'll sing that, and then is the picture? Okay, are we ready? My country is a big sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land from the pilgrims ride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. On the back of your program is the picture from last year. We cut it in half and we put it on there, but I did make one copy of it in a long row. So